Queer representation and the importance of it in film and TV media. This essay will talk about the importance and the impact of queer representation as representation determines how we are treated and how we treat others. It will detail some of the earliest representation in popular media, including Doctor Who and other major TV shows, and some landmark films such as Love, Simon and other such notable films. It will also detail some of the damaging or dishonest examples of queer characters in the media. Queer representation in TV and film hasn't always been great, and an argument could be made that it still isn't. However, it is leagues better than what it used to be. In the beginning of cinema, it was mostly art house French films that even started to look at queer representation. However, in the early 2000s, the British Broadcasting Corporation took a chance, and in the longest running TV show of all time, they introduced a character called Captain Jack Harkness, also known as Captain Jack, portrayed by John Barrymore. This would mark a historic moment in the history of major network television, as Captain Jack would be the first prominent queer character in network history. After his first appearance, he was queer-coded, but as he was loved by the fans, he was brought back to the show for the next season and again for the next few years. Each time his sexuality was expanded upon and fleshed out. By the end of his run on the show, he was known as a pansexual time-traveling super spy, eventually earning his own spin-off show, Torchwood, which continued to elaborate on his sexuality. One of the show's villains was in fact an alien that inhabited the body of women and fed off male orgasmic energy. His starring role in this series brought up the discussion about queer representation and spearheaded the movement to include more queer representation in film. While queer characters have been appearing in films and television for years now, some studios were afraid to put them in films, even when it would make the most sense. The directors and scriptwriters would often try to implement queer characters into their films by queer coding or queer baiting. Alternatively, they would have them appear for a few episodes as a small plot point, then never hear of them again. Characters like this is where you write the character as if they were queer, but never make it clear to the audience that the character is queer. This is prominent in early 2000s and early 2010s films and TV shows. Pitch Perfect is a great example of this, as the main character, Becca, played by Anna Kendrick, is commonly put in situations with Chloe Beale, played by Brittany Snow, that the audience infers as being somewhat romantic or sexual in nature. In the consistency of this happening, it makes it seem like between the two leads. However, for whatever reason, the film only has one queer character in its cast, and although this is good, it's a side character, and their story is not told other than to progress the story of the group, or as a community. Whereas a number of other characters have their stories progressed and expanded on and built up over the course of the 3 films, but due to Becca and Chloe being put in very queer-coded situations, it would stand to reason the characters themselves be queer. However, it is never mentioned in all 3 films that these characters are queer, and in fact, they mention that both characters are heterosexual, and their flirting is never mentioned in humans. Queer representation in media is incredibly important for young people to see. As especially noted, there is so much, whether it's right or wrong. Queer kids never actually get to see themselves represented on screen. This can cause harm to the young person's mental health, especially with everything else happening. Seeing queer people on screen can make massive changes for the youth, and now studios are realizing how beneficial and financially beneficial it is to have these characters displayed on screen. And while it's taking a while for most studios to realize this and be brave enough to include stories about queer people, some studios took some steps to make a splash in the market. For instance, 20th Century Fox, now Disney, released Love, Simon in 2018, a film centered on queer stories and coming out. Recently, Netflix has been going further with queer stories, with films like the Fear Street trilogy, which center around the power of love between 2 queer women. The major queer subplot in Netflix's Sex Education massively successful to original Heartstopper. It's a story of a teenage gamer struggling themselves in high school. These have been beneficial as when you see them, you can look up to someone and feel less alone in this big, big world. Although representation of queer people in the media is improving and is very much being helpful, it is still nowhere near what it should be, especially when looking at trans characters. Production companies are only now realizing the benefit of telling queer stories and headlining queer characters. It's taken a while for franchises such as Marvel and Star Wars to even show these characters. Marvel's first on-screen same-sex couple kiss was in Eternals, and they shared a kiss that was less than 3 seconds long. Meanwhile, Star Wars had a same-sex kiss in the background of a celebration shot in Rise of Skywalker, removed because too many countries did not want it, so they removed it. And although they feature queer characters in the canon games, the games don't reach anywhere near as large an audience as the movies and Disney Plus shows do. Marvel confirmed that Loki is gender fluid in the Loki Disney Plus series. However, this was never said explicitly and was in a blink and you miss it scene, again sidelining the inherent sexuality and gender identity of queer characters, despite headlining straight characters' sexuality. For instance, Captain America's entire story was around him being in love with a woman and wanting to get back to her. Peter Parker is shown as a teenager who was constantly going after women. While this makes sense for the character, it again is a character's sexuality being a major plot point in their story, and yet no queer characters get this treatment. In conclusion, the representation of queer characters is incredibly important, and the fact that the major production companies are not doing what they can by headlining queer characters
Which one of your old girlfriends turned you? Was it
queer
the,
stories
one
is
with the big
absurd.
eyebrow or the one with the braces?
Don't you ever shut the
Beneficial
hell
for
up?
the audience
It's not funny.
and the companies in question. All they have to do is write queer stories, which for the most part are universally understood because fundamentally they are stories about the self and finding one's true self. Thank you.
To queers in art.
I love it. Thank you, Simon.